Singing in the trolley car, what a jolly crowd they are. Jenny Long sings a song, Johnny Ray plays the guitar, Sadie Mae and Sturdy Jim.
1890s America. The nation headed full speed into a new industrial age. At the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, millions gathered to celebrate the innovations that powered American productivity. Incandescent lights, efficient farming methods, modern railways, a faster printing press. Visitors could even taste the promise of the next century. Cracker Jacks, diet soda, and the hamburger made their American debut.
I cherish the thought that America stands on the threshold of a great awakening. The impulse with which this phantom city could rise in our midst is proof that the Spirit is with us. President Grover Cleveland, opening day, May 1st, 1893.
Only a few days after the fair opened, the nation was hit by the worst financial crisis in its history. Stocks plummeted, businesses went bankrupt, and millions of Americans lost their jobs. In a lecture at the exposition, the young historian Frederick Jackson Turner suggested that the solution for the United States could be found beyond its borders.
The colonization of the Great West did indeed furnish a new field of opportunity, but never again will such gifts of free lands offer themselves. The frontier has gone, and with its going has closed the first period of American history.
And the frontier gone, there was something akin to a panic among people. Geez, if American institutions can't expand, they're going to shrink. We had to find some new outlet for our energy, for our dynamic nature, for this coiled spring that was the United States. So there was an intellectual justification, rationalization would be a better way to put it, for let's get our power overseas.
At the same time, there was an imperial race taking off in the world. Great Britain, France, Russia, Germany, and a new Japan that was just emerging as a world power at this time were all engaged in colonial enterprises.
Spain once ruled a great global empire. It encompassed most of Central and South America and a large portion of North America. As civil wars crippled Spanish authority, many colonies broke free. In the 1890s, all that remained of Spain's possessions were Cuba and Puerto Rico, and in the Pacific, the Philippines, Guam, and a few scattered islands.
By the 1890s, Spain was considered very low in the estimation of many, many Americans. Spaniards had been looming around our country through our formation years, and somehow we always felt a threat from them. They were not part of either the Anglo-Saxon culture or French culture, and so we always saw Spain as being almost a subhuman European peoples.
Through most of the 19th century, Spain's dwindling colonial revenue flowed from Cuba's sugar and slave trade. U.S. politicians since John Quincy Adams had eyed Spain's prized possession.
If an apple, severed by a tempest from its native tree, cannot choose but fall to the ground, Cuba, forcibly disjoined from Spain, can gravitate only towards the North American Union.
I'm on my way to Cuba, that's where I'm going. Cuba, that's where I'll stay.
In 1868, Cuban sugar planters, oppressed by increasing Spanish taxes, took up arms to win their independence. They seized much of eastern Cuba, freeing the slaves and destroying the sugar mills that had profited Spain. The commander of the rebel army was General Maximo Gomez.
Maximo Gomez was born in the Dominican Republic, And he came to Cuba as a Spanish soldier. That is the irony of the situation, because as soon as he arrived in Cuba, he defected and started organizing the Cubans. He tried to get them to use tactics and to train, things which were novel to the insurgents at the time.
The revolt known as the 10 Years' War failed to win the Cubans their independence. But the struggle for Cuba Libre, a free Cuba, continued, as Spanish promises for reform were never fulfilled. Gomez withdrew to his native Dominican Republic, leaving the Spanish with a depressed sugar industry. Spain could not afford to lend money to Cuban planters. Many turned to the United States.
Way down in Cuba where skies are clear, where it is summertime all of the year, they have the love.
Through 1895, as Americans visited and invested in Cuba, Cubans moved to the United States to study and work.
Shake it up, side.
It is in these years that we see the first significant Cuban immigration setting up, first in Florida, and then New York City, in Philadelphia, in Boston, and Washington. This period is critical to the formation of Cuban national identity, the means by which Cubans begin to articulate their discontent, their angst with the Spanish colonial system.
Baseball soon became a national obsession in Cuba. The North American sport provided a welcome alternative to traditional Spanish entertainment.
And so we have this counterpoint on one hand between baseball and bullfighting. And bullfighting represents the colonial regime. It's bloody, it's individual, it's singular. It seems to attract to the Havana Bull Ring mostly the Spaniards. To play baseball is to be modern, to be progressive. It is not to be Spanish. Coincidentally, some of the most important leaders of the Cuban insurrectionary movement are ball players who leave the ball field to take to the field of an armed struggle.
The revolution began anew in 1895 under the visionary leadership of José Martí. A Cuban poet and journalist living in New York, Martí visited Cuban communities across the United States to promote and raise funds for Cuban independence. His ideas reshaped Cuba Libre.
Martí realizes that the weakness of the previous attempt at independence was that Cuba was not united. It was divided by class, it was divided by race, and so he decides to mobilize the exiled community and to tell them that the cause of Cuba is one of all Cubans wherever they are.
Either the Republic is founded upon the integral character of every one of its sons, or the Republic is not worth one of our mother's tears, or a single drop of our hero's blood. Will we fear the Negro? The black man has drawn his noble body to its full height and is becoming a solid column for his native liberties. Others may fear him. I love him. José Martí.
He basically argues that black Cubans and white Cubans had come together, that going back to the 10 Years' War, their blood had joined in the fields of battle, and that because of that history, race had been superseded, it had been transcended. It no longer divided Cubans, which for the 1890s, it's a remarkable statement.